What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a new release film that I was very excited to watch because it is from director Joe Lynch, who made a movie I really enjoyed called Mayhem. And after hearing the initial plot of this and seeing the trailer, it felt like it was paying homage to a very different era of horror, like Lovecraftian horror mixed in with like elements of Brian De Palma, maybe a little Stuart Gordon thrown in there. Just homage to a lot of films that I really appreciate a lot. And knowing that, and with the talent involved in this, Heather Graham and Barbara Crampton, very excited to watch this movie. And the film I'm going to be talking about today is Suitable Flesh. Suitable Flesh is directed by Joe Lynch. After murdering her young patient, a once esteemed psychiatrist helplessly watches her life spiral into a nightmarish maelstrom of supernatural hysteria and gruesome deaths, all linked to a seemingly unstoppable ancient curse. So, as I said, very excited to check this movie out because I'm a big fan of Joe Lynch's Mayhem, was really excited to see what he worked on next, and unfortunately, I was not a fan of this movie. And it's disappointing because there's so much talent involved. I think the passion for this type of material was there. I just think there are elements in the execution that don't work for me personally, and that I think made the movie fall so short. And I'll break that down when I talk about the film as a whole. At the beginning of the film, we're introduced to Dr. Elizabeth Derby, played by Heather Graham, and she's in a straitjacket in this hospital. And Dr. Daniela Upton comes into the room, played by Barbara Crampton. We find out the two of them were friends. Heather Graham's character was a psychiatrist, and something happened where she murdered one of her patients. And she says, "This isn't what you think it is. Things didn't happen the way that you assumed that they did, and I'm going to tell you exactly what happened." And so the film is her giving a recount as to what happened to get her to that point. And we see her in her office. She's talking with patients. We get introduced to her husband at home. And one day she is in the office, and Asa comes into her office, played by Judah Lewis, and he's very distraught. He says someone is trying to control him. He says he's very scared, and can you please help me? Will you please come to my house and help me? And Heather Graham's character is like very like, hey, settle down. And something happens to him where his personality almost completely shifts, and he almost turns into a different person and then cuts back into reality. Well, shortly after, she becomes absolutely fascinated and one day decides, okay, I'll go to his house and figure out what's going on. And she's introduced to his father, Ephraim, played by Bruce Davison, who is a very strange individual. And when she goes to the house, all of this body swap stuff starts to happen. And we find out that there is something with an ancient curse that is causing these body swaps to be able to happen. And the entire film is Heather Graham trying to figure out how she can put a stop to this and essentially escape this curse because someone keeps swapping in and out of her body. And I really love the idea of this movie. I think it's really fascinating. I really love the visuals in the movie, especially when the body swaps are happening. I thought that that was fantastically well executed, really visually stunning and interesting to look at. And I also really appreciate the like psychosexual nature. Like I said, I'm a huge Brian De Palma fan, and this really reminded me of like Brian De Palma meets Stuart Gordon, like From Beyond, where you have these really insane horror concepts that are tied into these psychosexual elements. And I really love when films can bring those two worlds together. And I thought that it was interesting to take that approach with this. And I think the performances in this are all really good as well, especially Heather Graham and Barbara Crampton. I think they both eat up all of their screen time and they do a really great job. The issue that I have with this movie is the pacing and just the tonality of the film. You're paying homage to this very specific era in time and filmmaking. And the problem is there's a lot of dead time in this movie that doesn't really add to the overall payoff of the story. I just felt like I was getting scenes that were recycled, that didn't really add anything new to the narrative to keep me engaged throughout the entire runtime of the film. I also feel like some of the camp that exists in like a Stuart Gordon or a Brian De Palma film doesn't really come through in this. The humor humor a lot of times feels really forced, like they're trying to have an awkward moment in a scene, whereas I feel like Joe Lynch's Mayhem, the humor was very naturalistic and came off relatively easily, and I thought the rapport of the actors was really great. And this, everything that tries to feel kind of like that humor of a very different era doesn't really come through in the way that I think Joe Lynch was assuming that it was going to come through, and it just came off as kind of stale whenever there was a humorous moment. And like I said, I really like the body swap element to this, and I think the sequences are really well shot, but I also didn't care a whole lot for any of the characters. And so the problem for me is I didn't have any kind of emotional attachment in a way that made me care all that much when something bad was happening to the character. There's some really cool kill sequences in this. If you read the comments to this movie, the one everyone talks about is this backup camera kill in a car. I thought that was really cool. Joe Lynch obviously is familiar with creating very creative kill sequences after making the film Mayhem, which is an absolute blast of a movie to watch. And yeah, I just feel like for the most part, this film consistently left me wanting more. I kept thinking about everything that this movie could have done to be something I really loved, and instead it just fell short. I also felt like the ending was incredibly unsatisfying. I had a feeling that that was the direction that it was going to go, and I don't know, it just really didn't do that much for me. And I kept replaying it in my head after it was over, trying to think of scenes that really stood out to me or moments that I really cared about, and there just wasn't all that many, unfortunately. And that's not to say that I don't think Joe Lynch is a talented director, because I think that he is a very talented director. I just think this screenplay could have been tidied up a little bit more to pay homage in a way that feels more authentic and not just moments that feel sort of aligned with that type of a film. So have you seen Suitable Flesh? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was not very good, unfortunately. It's not all that memorable. The performances are good. There's some really creative visual sequences. There's not much else to it that I would recommend you go see it. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.